presentation, I tried to speak French, so I excuse myself this time. It's English. My son, he's 11. He saw the video. He said, "That's too bad, Dad." He's German like I am, but his learning curve is just way steeper, I guess. And maybe the second is, we already heard a lot of very concrete examples of things that are being actually done. I probably take a step back and look a little bit of what I see, what's happening. And I try to combine the open and the agile part. I think Michael already went a little bit into how do we produce all this. This is what a lot of people call agile. It's a lot faster, it's more flexible. And I'll try to explain what I see. And I see three main trends which support all of the initiatives that we discussed. So all the different things that we heard about. And one big trend is that customer requirements seem to change ever faster. So customers just don't want to determine what they want in a year or 2 years down the road. They change what they want. While you're still developing the idea, they maybe change what they want while you're starting to produce the product. They change what they want while it's in use. But for all of this, we are not really adapted. Coming back to the car, I mean, these things just last, which is good in a certain way. I mean, my cars are all very old. They all have more than 300,000 kilometers on the clock, and I'm very happy about it. But of course, I enter and I have nowhere to plug my phone in. It's just like, and the one car doesn't even have a radio. It's so loud, it wouldn't make a difference to have a radio or not. So, but the same, I live in the southwest of France, so I take the TGV all the time. They just know I cannot connect, I cannot charge my phone in this. And I immediately think, how stupid are they? But then I think, well, this thing is already 20 years old I'm rolling with, so maybe it's just normal that they didn't appreciate or could not foresee our changing requirements. The second is, we talk about hardware tonight. This is open hardware, but I think, I don't even know if we can even still distinguish between hardware and software. It's really, I mean, you can. I listened to a nice presentation yesterday, and he said, well, think about the book, the paper and the ink is hardware, all the ideas is the software. But like in a book, it's very hard to, and if you think about these products, that's the nest. I mean, is it a hardware product? Is it a software product? Software is very, very important. Software will change faster than hardware, but hardware will be much more modular. It has to change probably in the future as fast as software has to change. And that's what I see as the biggest thing. And the third, we already saw with Michael, the long tail. That's what you see basically everywhere. The times are over where, I mean, I grew up in Germany, and I still have this Golf in front of me, and it runs and runs and runs, and they were producing millions and millions of these cars. But I think that's over. There'll be a couple thousands of this model, and the Tabi will probably, I mean, maybe there are not even two Tabis in 10 years which are exactly the same. Will all be very different. So they might come from the same platform, but they'll all be very different. Although this is already the case, by the way, today. I worked for a company that were doing cables in cars. And I thought, well, that's a mass product. They're all the same in all cars. And they said they tried to get a 5 Series BMW from 2010. And they said there are now 2 5 Series BMW produced all over the world with exactly the same cables inside. They're custom, like the cables for a car. They're custom to the customer. But what we see is the long tail, right? I mean, there will be lots more small volume production, which of course means I got changing requirements. I got software which becomes much more important, and I get smaller volumes. How do I deal with that? But when you think about it, what I thought is very interesting here is we constantly think, oh, we are evolving. We're going from mass to smaller. But if you look in a lot of industries, and I think in the WikiHouse presentation we also saw that, it's more like a circle we are doing. We're not really progressing anywhere. It's really we're going back to where we've been. Huh? So if you think about cars, or if you think about any product, any kind of product was probably a custom product for one client. It was the client who determined everything. They said, we want exactly this, please build that for me. And then in the small little workshop, people build up to custom requirements one product. And then this is really where Taylor and Ford came in. Then they said, that's stupid. We can make this a lot cheaper. But if you think about it, from the customer being king, he kind of like slowly moved away, and production becoming king, right? It's all about bringing down the cost in production. So we did large-scale manufacturing, and then at some point we did mass manufacturing, and then the Japanese came and said, like, okay, this is all mass, but there is massive waste in there, so we can bring the customer back in. And really, lean manufacturing is really all about bringing the customer back in and thinking about what does he want, having a whole production line. So we went into lean manufacturing, and now everybody talks about agile manufacturing again, which is basically we jump back 200 years. But of course, based on technology in a very, very different way, of course. But it's, if you think about this, in other industries, it's exactly the same thing. Energy. Energy production was all basically renewable. All our energy came from renewable sources, and it was all decentral. Like everybody would produce his own energy, heat, whatever it was, with wood. So it was renewable, decentral energy. And then suddenly, especially in France, I guess, we had nuclear power plants all over the place, which is highly centralized. And now, what you see is, my house in the southwest of France, of course, it's got solar panel on top, you got all this little, so it goes back to renewable and decentral. So that's something to think about. Of course, the question is, what kind of technologies enable us to go back? And I think that's where where these demands from the market demands us to be more agile and small scale. And at the same time, we realize we can't do this alone. I mean, there's so many things going on. So not even Renault or Siemens, companies with 300,000 people, even they somehow realize, we have 300,000, but there are 9 billion out there, so there might be a couple smart ones which just not work for us. So how do we tap into this? And I think here it's interesting that there is already a lot of research that we can draw upon. But mostly the research goes back to how do we make open innovation in terms of open research or open development. But I think this is really interesting. There is a very nice study done by a good friend of mine who worked at, I think he looked at 23,000 open innovation initiatives and what makes them successful. And he said it's basically two very simple things, and they're almost intuitive. It's proactive attention. Nobody wants to join in if you don't do the first step. So if you proactively say, like, we put something on the table, and now we invite the community to come. But if you just say, like, we want your ideas, come and present your ideas, it's a little bit like, yeah, why should I, right? But also reactive attention is, whoever brings these ideas, you have to react somehow, right? And sometimes this is you have to think through this up front. If you do have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people joining into your initiative, how do you deal with that? Especially newcomers, they could clearly show that basically a single acknowledgement of their contribution keeps them for a very long time in the loop, while that no acknowledgement, they're turned off right away because you think, why should I? I mean, what's in it for me? Why should I contribute if nobody even acknowledged it? But the big question is, of course, how do we go into open manufacturing? And I think that's really like a really new ground that we'll see. And of course, what we heard about, like small workshops, share equipment, bring people in, that's probably going to be the future. And the question is, how does that work? How do people there share these things? Who takes care of them, and so on? And that was basically it, to show a little bit like probably how we look at things. By the way, of course, I always have the business perspective on these things. I work at the ESCP here, not far from here, as a professor for strategy and innovation. For me, from a business point of view, when we heard about Tesla today, I mean, this is, from a business point of view, it's not very astonishing that somebody opens up his patents. And I think Benjamin was already alluding to this. I mean, if you think you're disruptive, well, you better open up your patents, because otherwise nobody will follow you. You're very, very disruptive, but very, very alone. And you see a lot of companies who did that, who probably failed. By the way, if you think back about Apple, now Apple has done everything right, looking backwards, but in the beginning it was exactly that, right? They had this closed system, they had nobody to participate, and they lingered on with 3% market share for 20 years. They were always cool, but they were not really profitable or big. And you can see that in other, I worked for a company, a German company who does elevators, ThyssenKrupp elevators, and they developed a twin elevator. Fantastic thing. I mean, for architects, you have two elevators in one shaft, moving totally like separately from each other. So you get about 60 to 70% more traffic in one shaft, which is New York, I don't know, 80 stories high. This is very expensive room that you stay. They're not really selling these elevators, I think, for what the benefits of the elevators are. Why? Because they're not open. That's at least my interpretation, they're not open. We all know elevator business is a very weird business. Basically, they give these things away for almost free because they screw you over on the maintenance. Because the people who buy the elevators are not the same who pay for the maintenance. Interesting market, but even there, in this market where everybody knows it's all about maintenance, they're so innovative, you know, nobody else in the world can maintain those elevators but ThyssenKrupp, because they seal the pipe. So a lot of people say, I don't know if I really want to go with them, because they keep, so I think there are many opportunities or many situations where openness is just pure basic economic sense to do so. But there are also, we know, many situations where it's exactly the opposite. So, but maybe just some observations. What we also had here in all the talks, I think we sometimes get carried away by all these opportunities, and then we talk about the technology and how we do it. But I mean, to be agile and to be open, it's all about the people who do that. I mean, if they're not agile and if they're not open, it's not going to happen. And I think this is, by the way, this is from the Agile Manifesto, one of the core. It's people over process. And if you think back about the loop I told you, I think we spent a lot of time where process was definitely ruling people. And now with the customer coming up on top, it's people over process. So unless you make work stimulating and self-determined, so people can express themselves and can do what they want and what they think is worth doing, agility and openness will never happen. And you could hear that in all the presentations. The people were burning for their ideas, right? I mean, it was just not just another car. It was like my baby, my car. It was this WikiHouse, which is like, that's my thing, and I really want to change the world. But you can only deliver that if people are over processed. By the way, in hardware, I think it's open always sounds like we're really crazy and open to everybody. But I think in hardware, it's the first thing is, are you in big companies, are you already open to your own people that work for you? Because I bet even in Renault, probably 60% of the people might not even know that you exist and that there are all these fantastic opportunities. So how do you even get them on board? But then also in hardware, I think that's different from software, if there are still differences. You have to get your suppliers on. I mean, this is so much more in software, you're much more standalone, but in hardware you typically have important suppliers. So I think the first door to open is really to suppliers, and not this old model that we still have in, I forgot the name of the Spanish guy, which basically you squeeze your suppliers. Well, you can, but you'll never get innovation from them, I think. Well, underlying, it's all about people, but underlying, of course, is, I mean, you have to track all these kind of things. I mean, we have the opportunity, I think we know, we have the opportunity but we have to think up front, like what kind of data do we want to gather, and good quality data is key. And I think the next is, there is already a lot of research out on open innovation and also on agile innovation. So I think we can really build on that to make the next step.